So once again, everyone, usually welcome to Impact Hub, your home away from home. We are really super excited to have you all here today. And thanks to our partners today, Reach for Change, Mötesplats Social Innovation, and Invest Stockholm. Thank you for hosting this together with us and with support from Kiada. This is going to be a test, a lab, and I hope we all come out from it a little bit wiser, but hopefully with more questions than we come when we are here. My name is Jesper. I'm the founder of Impact Hub Stockholm, and I'm mostly glad that you all come here today, because this is about creating a diversity, a community where we can speak to the unlikely allies to find some solutions that we so dearly need in the presence of the future we have ahead of us. Impact Hub is a global ecosystem consisting of 112 locations like this one that you have today in more than 67 countries. We have 25,000 members globally who on a daily basis have events like this or taking part in incubators or trying to solve some of the issues that we have ahead of us. The reason we are here today started maybe over a year ago when we did the Impact Week and we tried to launch an Impact Day that we had tested during this year. Once a month, we hosted conversations like this to dig deeper into the problems that we had ahead of us. And part of that then emerged where we did a research part for Invest Stockholm around the ecosystem of social companies or social entrepreneurship and how does the ecosystem look like in Stockholm. And some of the answers we got from there was to dig deeper into a little bit more during Almedalen when we hosted an event. And I see some of you here today, maybe you were at Almedalen as well. Thank you, Rodrigo, for adjusting the lights so we can see all the shiny people we're going to hear more from in a minute. And let me look at my notes as well so I don't forget anything. So part of what we came up from this workshop that we had in Almedalen was that to find some of these solutions and to build an ecosystem, we have to have long-term strategies. We also need to focus more on the collaboration part in this, and we need to find someone who can be that glue in the system, who can connect people to each other. And we have done this at Impact Hub for many years, and this is part of why we think it's important to host a lab like this. So we wanted to test today with you, hopefully, how we can address this issue, and Gabby will talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But what we want to do, what came also out from this workshop in Almedalen was that when it comes to financing impact startup, or when it comes to financing the solutions to the problem that we have ahead of us, we need a new financial system. We need a new ways to addressing this. And we need to create some kind of a manifest together to present to politicians, to the people who are in power, who can change the financial system. And this is one part of it. So what we want to do after the day today is to take all the knowledge and all the things that come out of today and see if we can continue together, co-create a manifest. So this day today doesn't end when you leave. All your inputs today will be highly valuable for us to continue that, and you will have another invitation, I can promise you that, to continue co-creating this manifest. So once again, thank you for being here, all of you. Thank you for our partners, and in a minute, Gabby will present our fantastic panel here. So Gabby, our rock star of this afternoon, thank you for being my fantastic CEO and making this possible. So the floor is yours.
Hello. Everyone hear me there? Yes? Okay, welcome. Welcome, everyone. So nice to have you here at Impact Hub Stockholm. Okay? Yes, there. Thank you so much.
I can also be the PA guy.
No, the thing is here that we all do a little bit of everything. So we all have different roles and know where is everything. But anyway, but thank you so much for being here. And I mean, I always say the most important thing that we have in our lives is our time. So the fact that you are here sitting down with us and spending these next hours with us means a lot. So thank you. My name is Gabriela Rodriguez. I work here at Impact Hub Stockholm. I'm the CEO here. And so just a quick intro on a personal note on this. This topic for me is super important because I'm originally from Mexico, and the aspects of course, gender equality, gender violence, inclusion, all this, how do you say, like frame of this super important topic that affects us all. So for me, it's interesting to see how it also affects here in Sweden, that it's like a country that it's from the whole world is one of the most advanced, and that this topic is intertwined in the system as well, and the awareness of it. But there's still some glass ceilings that haven't been broken. And we know that this requires collaboration from all the different sectors across the spectrums, everyone in all the different levels of decision making. And so we are so happy to test and pilot and try to understand from different perspectives, how can we address this issue? So our panelists today, they come from different sectors. We have Veronica, representing the public sector. We have Carolin, more on the female founder entrepreneurial world. We have Jonas, he is in the aspect of investment, impact investment. And we have Andréa from Reach for Change, who is representing the ecosystem builders. So just a quick intro for what to expect today. So we're going to have these first 30 minutes. We're going to jump into just the introduction to the topic, to have like a baseline and a deep understanding on how does it work in terms of the different shoes that all these stakeholders in the ecosystem, how they navigate this topic. So this is going to be the first 30 minutes. We're going to ask very strategic questions to each one of you. And then after that, we're going to go into action mode, workshop mode. So it was planned that you were separated in different groups because you're going to meet again for the workshop part. And we're going to put ourselves with different roles for a different set of times and addressing specific questions. Same questions, different perspective. But we'll tell more about it a little bit later. But let's start. So each one of you is going to introduce yourself and just say your name, where you're working at, and then how does this topic relates to your work field. We can start with you, Veronica.
Yes, hello. Sorry. My name is Veronica Eriksson, and I work at Invest Stockholm, which is a part of the city of Stockholm. And our work is about how can we support citizens in Stockholm to start new companies, and how can we support companies in Stockholm to grow. So why we are very interested in this area and here today discussing this is because it's part of our job to identify what hindrances are there in Stockholm for companies to grow. And of course, I mean, when we're speaking about companies founded by female, and also very important to say, not on every entrepreneur outside of the norm, so to say, that we usually talk about underrepresented entrepreneurs. They have a very hard time raising funds for their companies when they want to expand. So of course, it's a very important question for us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Carolin?
Yes, so my name is Carolin Solskär, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nuverica. We digitalize EU directives in the food sector to help food producers to be compliant and still be able to focus on creating great products. And as mentioned, I'm here from the perspective of being a female entrepreneur who both have taking in money, but also will continue, hopefully, to do so in the future. And I've been working a lot with, raising like the awareness about the question around diversity for a long time. I've been working in the tech sector for several years and so on. And I think it's so important to really just dare to talk about these questions. And exactly as you mentioned, Veronica, it's not only like men versus females, it's anyone who is in an underrepresented group, because it is unfair, and it's so easy to forget that when you're out there and just doing your daily work. So we're very happy to be here.
Yes, it's how you say, it's like not a topic, something foreign. It's something that you live every day. Yeah. Thank you. And Jonas?
Hi guys, so my name is Jonas Almeling. My day job is that I'm head of Nordics for the world's largest crowd equity platform called Seedrs. That is also part of Republic Group, which is an American group, building a global ecosystem for private investments in early stage startups. And but the real reason why I'm here is that about 15 years ago, when I crashed my last company, I realized that my true passion in life lies in building people. And then and there, I sort of decided and made it my North Star to make myself as valuable as possible for entrepreneurs and people that are trying to solve the important problems in our world. And on that journey, I've been in pretty much every role there is. I've been an entrepreneur myself within that. I've worked with incubators and accelerator. I've worked with investors and government institutions and corporates and so on. And this has also very much been a process of trying to achieve ways of getting more people of diversity into this space. I definitely represent a white middle-aged man who am now at a position where I can pretty much do whatever I want in this world. And it's my duty to give as much room as possible and provide as much space as possible in and around what I do to make sure that others can do the same. So that's really why I'm here. But I'm also here to share some stories with you guys on what's actually been achieved. So I really like the fact that this is not really a question of should we do it, why should we do it, what's the actual value of having diverse founders, and what is the real reason for having a female investor and whatnot. No, the question here is how do we take action on it, and how do we make sure that that turns into result. And that's really why I'm here, to share some insights on actions on this.
Yes, and this is a very interesting point you raise of unlike other maybe parts in the world where the level of awareness about the importance of this topic, it's still on trying to explain why is it important, why is it, but here, unlike in Sweden, and it's going to be super valuable to understand what has been working, is now that we know that it's an important, and we know that, yes, of course, it benefits. How? Let's go on the how more efficiently. Exactly. And yes, thank you. And Andréa?
Yes, hi, my name is Andréa Råsberg. I am country manager at Reach for Change, which is a non-profit organization supporting children and youth through social entrepreneurship. And I would argue that everything we do is about challenging the stereotypes around entrepreneurship and innovation. So it's definitely a topic that's spot on both for me and for Reach for Change. So easy choice.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the brief, the overall look on how does it work on your side, on your side of this vast ecosystem. So we start with you, Veronica. So as we know, data says, and it's very clear that still there's only 1% that it's invested in female-led ventures. And so this is a reality in Sweden also. So question to you is, how is, based on this data, how is the public sector addressing this actively? What kind of steps or actions, or how are they putting this in their agenda to increase these numbers or to address this problem?
Well, I can only speak for the city of Stockholm, and we try to address it in many ways. For example, we had directives from the city for a couple of years now to put extra support and attention to all underrepresented groups, and then we try to support in many ways. Give extra support around starting a company, We run a growth program where at least one of the entrepreneurs in the founding team must be an underrepresented entrepreneur. That program is called Stockholm Scale-Up Program. So I mean, we do a lot of like hands-on actions, but it's a big and complex issue. And it's not only in Stockholm, it's national, it's international. We can see that it's all over the world, it's the same problem. It may differ, they say in America it's about 3% of companies founded by women that get investment. In Sweden they say it's 1 or maybe even 0.5. So it's a huge problem, and we have to try to figure out what's our piece, like what can we do? But I think there's an enormous puzzle to lay just to understand the problem. And it's on systematical level, and of course we have a part to play there. But it's also on a personal level. And I mean, on a systematical level, it's like, yes, how do we measure? We lack statistics in Sweden. I don't know how it looks in other countries, but Bolagsverket, they cannot even give statistics, like how many companies are run by women. So it's very hard to do something and measure and, you know, prototype and follow up exactly like entrepreneurs do if we don't even have the data. And that is something that I think we can address. But then there's other parts like biases.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on a social level. We all carry them. You know,
Unconscious
biases. And there, I think the research, academica, is so important. That they do research, they show this is happening. And I would also like to say that maybe it's not really in the, like, I think many Swedes don't really want to admit that, yes, I do carry biases. So I think this is it's a huge problem, and it's for the whole society to kind of be a part of the solution. So I mean, I don't have a clear answer, but yes, I think we have an important role in it.
And you mentioned a bit about this lack of statistics. However, there's research, there's just statistics and research that demonstrates what kind of initiatives maybe the public sector is doing. Could you share maybe some of, in your experience or what you know of, that it's being done actively to address this?
Yes, there's one research that I find extremely interesting. That is, it's a study made by Malin Malmström from Luleå Tekniska Universitet. She did it in collab with some other researchers. And they were looking at government-led VCs. And they were actually like in the room when the investment managers were discussing pitches they had heard from both female and male entrepreneurs. And then they were studying, you know, the language. How were the VCs talking about these entrepreneurs? And it was so interesting because they didn't even address the female entrepreneurs as entrepreneurs. It was she said, she did, she. And when they were speaking about the male entrepreneurs, it was he's a businessman, he's an entrepreneur, a visionary. So, I mean, there's research that very clearly points out that, like, there is a lot of biases going on, and the decisions are not rational. That's the problem, because we have enough data showing that it's a good investment to invest in a company founded by a female. So if everyone was like taking rational decisions, that would be enough. But since they are not, it's more emotional decisions colored by unconscious biases.
Yes.
It's problematic to change that.
Yes.
But it needs to be done.
So on that point, on that note of how it's out there that having more diverse groups of founders and companies led by different genders also in leadership roles. Question to you, Carolin. Perhaps in your side, how does this look like? For example, in your experience, maybe in the company that you have founded, or just you as an entrepreneur, how does this look like? Going back to the question of diverse people from different backgrounds in leadership roles. How does this reflect in doing better or doing, like thriving?
So I think like when I look at how diversity makes both leadership and teams in general better, I tend to look more on different different qualities that different people have, because for me it's hard to say obviously we all know there are no stereotypical qualities for a certain type, like a woman or someone from a certain country or so on. So more like how important it is to have diverse team with different type of qualities. So for me, for example, I'm not very detail oriented. I'm a person who likes move really fast and get things happening and just run, which is great, especially when you run a startup. But if I would hire only people who are like me, sure, we would move super fast, but I mean we would have super poor quality of everything we do. So to be fair, it would be sloppy. And then it doesn't matter that we are super fast and effective, because no one would like to buy what we are doing, because it wouldn't be a good platform. So for me, it's important to first of all, the next person I hire after myself, it needs to be a perfectionist. It needs to be someone who can hold me back a little bit and tell me sure, I mean, but we're not done here yet. We need to do this and this and this. So I made sure that my two, the two people I have the company with, they are both very detail oriented. So they help me to make the work more perfect, and I push them to move faster, which is a great dynamic. And I mean, I've seen that in all roles I've had during my work life, how important it is to find people who are very different from yourself, but that you still at the same time, I mean, you share the same goal. We all know where we're going, but we're all going to contribute in different ways.
Yes.
And for me and my team, for example, we are all very different, and we all come from very different backgrounds and so on. But we still have the same foundation in how do we treat each other, how do we treat others, and all of those things, which make us a good team. So I think it's so important to really focus on finding people with other qualities than yourself, and really dare to push that. What do we miss? And look both on qualities, and then of course also how does it look with with gender? How does it look with age? How does it look with where nationalities and everything?
Exactly. And back to your point, Veronica, on how by not, for example, on those points active role that the City of Stockholm is doing, we're not only focusing on gender, but rather those that are underrepresented, creating that base, and it can be applicable to anything around inclusion, diversity, equality. But one more question for you, Carolin. Going back to this topic of if we were rational, we would be more advanced in everything, in inclusion, diversity, everything. So we are not rational, right? So what kind of barriers have you faced, when starting up this journey as an entrepreneur? Has it been an issue for you? Sometimes have you encountered moments of both discrimination or biases? If you have maybe a story to share, or in your experience, how does it look like? Yes.
So I mean, I definitely had times where I felt that I haven't been taken serious, and I don't know if that's because I have a goofy personality but I mean, I think every person who is in an unrepresented group, you would ask, they will all give you a different answer to this question, because I think it depends on what type of qualities do you have that isn't considered the group you are in. So me, for example, I'm quite of a daredevil, I would say. I take risks. And a conversation that every time I have a meeting with an investor, every time they bring up that female founders isn't taking as much risks as male founders, every time. And for me, I get frustrated, because that means that they haven't taken the time to get to know me. They haven't honestly read my pitch good at all, because it is a daring pitch. I take risks.
They haven't even Googled you.
Yeah, exactly. They don't follow me on Instagram. So for me, like I think like every time that conversation comes up, and I understand that they are doing it in a way to like push me a little bit, but it's wrong. Like you should like there are other things, of course, that I maybe don't think about when they bring up that maybe are because I'm a woman, but for me, I don't think about it. But risk is really something where I feel like you don't have to tell me to take risks. And another thing that I mean, it hasn't happened for me yet in this company as a founder, but when I was younger, I used to work as a sailing chef, and I was the head chef. I was young. I started when I was 14, and I did it until I was 23. So I was young, and I was also a woman. And I usually had a sous chef, so a second chef, that sometimes it was a woman and sometimes it was a man. And every time we come to a new harbor, the harbor captain always come to the boat, and you make the order for the groceries you want from that country. And every time I had a sous chef that was a man, they always talk to him. They never like even saw me. They just go to him and talk to him and ask him what we wanted to buy. And I know other female founders who has this exact experience in their startups, where they go to meetings, maybe an important sales meeting, and they have one of their employees who's a guy coming with them, and he's the one who's like getting all the handshakes and like treated like the important person when it's actually the woman who is the CEO. So yeah, I definitely feel that there are a lot of different like scenarios, and also of course always different for every person.
Yes, absolutely. Hearing you speak is like, okay, you start to reflect how you're saying, because whenever you put yourself in these positions of, how do you say, when you're presenting yourself in this persona, all these different insecurities or doubts or self-doubts can come, or you think that other ones are thinking about them, but then it's just navigating all this world of unconscious biases and internalized biases. Oh, yes.
Yeah, can I add one more
Yes.
thing? Because I think also like one of the problem becomes exactly that you also yourself going into like meetings or events or whatever with the thoughts about what everybody else is thinking about you, which is also like another like part of the complex problem, is that of course it's one thing what everybody else what their biases is, but also the biases that you put on yourself and you believe that this is what everybody else think about me.
Yes. So this is really good to give us a perspective of when on this side, whenever you're pitching your company and pitching your idea out there. So we have these internalized thoughts. Let's put ourselves on the shoes of the investor side. So maybe, Jonas, you can guide us a little bit of, because you mentioned how you became an ally by heart, good, and trying to embrace and give like this wider approach on how, whenever we're making decisions, like financial decisions of investing. Can you give us maybe like an insight of how does it look like whenever taking decisions, taking like an innovative approach when you get like a portfolio and trying to understand how important it is to put forth this aspect of diversity, this aspect of,
Yeah. So there's so many rabbit holes to dive into here, and I say that I'm seeing that I really don't have 45 minutes to talk about this, but so I'll try to sort of stay focused on this. But I just want to say one thing about the last thing that Carolin said here, which is sort of in relationship to the human experience of this, which is the imposter syndrome, which is a huge problem in our world. And it's not a problem, it's not a personal problem. It's actually a systematic problem where we create imposter syndrome. 70% of professional people in this world, in our developed world, go around and feel that they are imposters in the world that they are existing, where they're contributing, where they're being valuable people. 70%. And this is not their fault, but we treat it like it's their fault. We treat it with medicine, with therapy, with whatnot, but we don't really look at how we create this. It's in the design of our systems, of our meetings, and how we actually are contributing and creating that. So that's a really, really important takeaway in this, that you need to look at this from a design perspective of how do we make it possible for people to feel that they are included and not exclude them by design. So that I just had to say that. So that's one part of this. But then from an investor point of view, so there, as we say, I mean, there first of all, there are biases and conscious and unconscious biases. And this is the big challenge when it comes to this sort of startup, entrepreneurship, investor world. We're not going to get rid of biases, but we need to start, first of all, looking at data points, to your point. Like every funnel, everywhere you start, who do you meet? Why do you meet them? What does that meeting look like? Where did that meeting result in? Where did that go through the funnel towards making a decision on whether an investment should be made or not, and whether how you then execute on that investment? You will never, never, ever find a solution to this problem unless you first measure, then take action, and then evaluate that action. And with the company that I work for, Seedrs, who's a huge machine that's turning over. We've invested £3 billion in more than 2,000 rounds over the last 10 years. A few years ago, we started measuring basically every gate in that process to see where's the problem. And then we started inserting different actions to those gates, and we started saying, okay, so what if we could, do an activity based on HBTQY, and we could, put founders of that diverse perspective at the forefront, and what if we could put stories into other companies that are also represented, and that where you feel represented, even though it's not a founder of that sort, but there's a company that could put their perspective on that, so that you feel included in the story. These things made huge impact. So that's really one of the major keys in this, that you need to be really, really brave to analyze your own processes, analyze your data on that, and then really take those actions and then trim towards it. And be brave, fail, learn from that, whatnot. But I think we too much focus on trying to achieve something, and then we go to action directly, without really analyzing and really understanding where that action itself fits the problem. At least that's been something that I've been part of the last more than 10 years, where every initiative, every government initiative, there's like a focus from there. Vinnova hands out money there, but there's nothing really there to say that, is this actually fit for the problem?
And to build up on that point, what kind of setbacks do you get whenever proposing this innovative idea, let's say, of really look the problem holistically and based on data, be data driven? What kind of setbacks can you face in terms of maybe when you're including this in your work of financing or investing in companies?
Well, I think that one of the major challenges with the investor side of this as a whole is that it is a club. It's an internal club, and it wants to be an internal club. It does not really want to include others in this. You're very special when you reach the point of being an investor. You can make those decisions on what's going to be a moonshot and which founder should we support and whatnot. That's a club. You've earned that space. You've earned that privilege, and you're not super interested about sharing that privilege. So I think that's the major challenge here, is that we need to, as individuals, lead forward and also be able to then invest in and do the extra work, walk the extra mile, to actually then start gathering this data and trying to take action on it. It's super easy for every man with a vest like this to sit there and say, yeah, we look at all female founders and da. But honestly, over the last 10 years, we haven't seen much result in this neck of our woods in terms of who is actually getting investments, who is actually making those decisions, and are we leaning forward to make that an inclusive world? So that, and to that point, that's really why I'm so passionate about Seedrs, because there are so few barriers here. It's a platform that makes it available for people to invest on the same terms as private venture capitalists, where you're not being chosen, you are choosing. And that's led to us, for example, having 35% female investors on the platform, and we have more than 1 million investors on the platform today. Wow. So that's pretty effing cool.
Clap to that. Yes.
I'm sorry? The return on investment? So over the last 10 years, we've invested in more than 2,000 rounds. We've had about 65 exits on that. So this is really a long-term play. We invest in companies early on, so we still don't see a majority on the returns. What is interesting is that we invest in more than 300 companies every year, which is sort of a wide play on venture capital-backed companies. And we've seen that somewhere around 75% over 10 years' time are still around. And almost 75% of those companies are equally or more valued than they were when we invested. So if anyone who's been in the investment world, that's fantastic numbers.
Before we go into questions, I want to add up on that because we're going to have time for 2 or 3 questions. Yes, we're going to have time. But to hold that point of like, it's very interesting what you just say. It's not like they are choosing us, we are choosing, or we are kind of like shaping the landscape. Yes. So I want, that landscape is this vast ecosystem. So I want to go to ecosystem builders like Reach for Change. So how does it look like for you in terms of when you want to influence this investing landscape? Like how do you promote and make sure that, yes, I mean, social enterprises, social innovation is so important because it's more, yes, you tell us, like what is, in your day, how does this look in terms of trying to influence?
Yeah, well, I think definitely that ecosystem builders like accelerators, incubators, venture capital firms, and other kinds of entrepreneurship support organizations can have an important role in influencing this landscape, specifically when it comes to gender diversity. And for us and many others, there are a number of areas maybe that stand out, and I want to mention a few of them. So first of all, obviously, I guess the most important one then is access to capital. A lot of these kinds of organizations do invest early on in startups, and by seeking and choosing female entrepreneurs and diverse startups, you can influence the misbalance here. A second area where we work a lot is with education and training. So by offering programs, workshops, mentorship opportunities, and so on, that can really help like build the skills of becoming investment ready for all entrepreneurs, but specifically female entrepreneurs. And then it might seem simple, but the networking part, I think, also is important. By connecting female entrepreneurs by investors, that can also help bridging the gap and sort of creating those connections. And one thing, Reach for Change do all of these things through our programs in Sweden and abroad. And one thing that we also do, which I think many more also increasingly is doing, is to focus specifically on like initiatives that are focusing on diversity and inclusion, by securing that the programs and investments are more representative. And ways to do that is to sort of include diversity targets, but also addressing the specific programs directly to underrepresented groups. So that's just on a more maybe general level, a few things that I think ecosystem builders can contribute within.
Yes, exactly. And there's so many intersections among those when you talk about inclusion and diversity. So many different groups are like intertwined: women, refugees, women of color. So very, very interesting. And one point to add up, same as Reach for Change Impact Hub, we are a global network, and one of the things that we in the statistics and in our yearly reports globally, we do have the majority of the social enterprises that we support. They are led by women-led, female-led. I think it's like 60 or 70% or so. And one very interesting fact is that this is not a given. It's like by action, very actionable points that you do within your infrastructure. For example, here well, whenever someone opens another impact hub, it needs to be at least 50% a female co-founder. So it usually, our program director, our global program director was here yesterday, and to this point, it was that the majority of the co-founding, or like the hubs, at least it's like 3 co-founders, so at least it's 2 women that are in the group. So it's like a small step, a small tweak that has ripple effect in everything, that how the spaces are led, but then also what's the intention of the focus of these different hubs. And yeah, so yes, definitely whenever you are doing this kind of like a targeted focus, it can just expand and open different like doors of inclusion. But maybe one last question before we go into questions, Q&A. One last question for you. How do you connect in like an example of in your experience, how does being an ecosystem builder how does it look like whenever speaking to investors, whenever speaking to entrepreneurs, whenever speaking with the public sector? How does that look in your dynamic?
Interesting. I would say, first of all, then speaking with investors, just as we train our entrepreneurs to become investment ready, I believe that we also have a responsibility to talk with investors and sort of inform them about the special nature, maybe, of social entrepreneurship. I mean, it's many of our entrepreneurs that we support, they have these kind of hybrid business models. And it's important for an investor to understand that it's not about, maybe only finding the next unicorn. It's not like you can't expect aggressive growth or huge J curves. But there are other financial mechanisms out there, and you have to look into those and really raise awareness about the other kinds of forms that are available and what's realistic to expect, and what other kinds of values there are also to get back from going in and investing in a social entrepreneur. And with the public sector, I guess it's many of the entrepreneurs that we support, they have public sector as their main customer, and this can be tricky sometimes. So we definitely have a role to play when it comes to facilitating those kinds of cross-sector dialogues, and looking into like, what are the barriers? How can we get around them? And right now we are looking into a quite interesting, I would say, initiative where we are developing a collaboration model between one of our social entrepreneurs and a municipality, in order for the method to grow and expand to other places, but also for others to use the same collaboration model, because there are a lot of like pre-steps you have to take to really make these kinds of businesses and collaborations to fly.
Yes, it's very complex. I mean, it's complex in terms of how to set it up, but then have all the stakeholders aligned and clear the understanding. We open for 2 questions before we kick off to the workshop. Someone had a question? I think. No? They forgot? They got it right? Oh, we can have. We open for 2 questions. Yes.
So everybody's talking about the situation. We know it by now. We know how it looks like. Why don't we focus on talking about the solutions? And with these, and who is actually in charge of solving the diversity, or even better, inclusion questions? Because if I want to, if I am the, let's see, a white male CEO or manager, and I want to include somebody, I'm going to hire a stupid black guy and a stupid white woman. Because if I have to fire them, I have a reason for it. So the question is, how can the right people own the inclusion solution? Because now we talk about the problem. And why do we need to talk about gender and sexuality when it comes to inclusion, and not about the mental capabilities, skills that normally are not fitted in the box. Meaning, and that can be solved by starting job rotation first. I mean, I'm an engineer by training, and I spend a lot of time in investments, but I'm going back now. I want to build factories in Sweden. Semiconductor factories, automation, whatever. ABB just announced that they are going to build a hub in Västerås. I opened a champagne bottle for that, because that is going to be a hub, a cluster, that is going to foster new industries, new companies. I am thinking 20 years from now, when we are going to put all the talents, I think it's a misallocation of talent today in the Western world. We need to put great minds to work in factories, to the manufacturing process is more efficient, more sustainable, the recycling, blah, blah, blah. This is what I think. Any questions for me?
So, well, that's happened. I'm trying to understand. Is that a question or maybe a statement? So, is your question is how does inclusion looks like?
It was more rhetoric questions. Why do we keep on talking about the reasons and the situation, and why don't we talk about the solutions to the problems?
But that's what the workshop is for.
It is the intention of the day, so that I think we're at least on.
Exactly. Yes.
And you should be impatient. We should be.
Yes.
We have been talking for a long time, so it's really time to take action. But I just want to sort of echo a little bit on what you say. I think we do talk about this very much in that matter of groups of people which are potentially underserved and underprivileged and so on, and that's rightfully so. But in terms of what you actually get out of the value of diversity is diversity of perspectives and managing that diversity. So unless you understand that there's a superficial part of this and there's sort of a how we are grouped as people in this world, that's one part of the diversity. But when it comes to making use of that diversity in any shape or form or any context, you have to manage that diversity of perspectives. You know, to Carolin points, it's like if she were to hire people who would be, actually much more meticulous and detail-oriented, but she would still only tell them to run effing fast and not use that skill, then she wouldn't manage that diversity. So that's sort of it's a simple example of it, but I think it's super important to be able to focus on that if you're actually going to get value out of diversity, you need to be able to manage that.
Would you agree with me that after 20 years now, let's say, about we more accept the sexual and skin color diversity and gender diversity rather than thoughts diversity? Look what happens in America. You cannot even talk about things that you disagree about.
Yeah, to the point of saying there are many rabbit holes to dive into here. Yeah, I absolutely.
My first job after school, when I moved to Sweden, it was with Ericsson. And Ericsson and like big corporations organize this type of obligatory building, right? And in all the teams, I mean, that we do the groups, it was a not so advantaged guy, not too good looking, not too smart, bad skin and whatever. He was taking a lot of place, and when he had a question, everybody was supporting him. Once I had a question, he jumped out of the stool and said, "Oh, that is not important, that is so easy." So I couldn't even put up a question, and I was also a young, cute girl.
Let's interrupt in there. That same energy, we're bringing it to the workshop. We're bringing it to the workshop. So
let's take action.
Yes. So the idea for this workshop is actually based on these different perspectives of how to address this like super complex issue from all these different rabbit holes. So we're going to take the next 60 minutes. We're going to go back to the groups that we were introduced. You can have a quick, super quick leg stretcher, grab some coffee, and then go back to the groups. We printed out there's going to be 2 questions that you are going to solve in your groups. 2 questions only. But the idea is that we're going to be rotating 10 minutes each, 15 minutes we put, but we ran a little bit of time. Oh, sit down. Where are you going? I'm going up. So we are going to, these 2 questions, you're going to be addressing them in your groups. We're going to start with the first one, so you understand how it's going to work. With this first question, So what are the biggest challenges to achieving gender diversity in startup and impact financing? So based on this question, all of us, the first rounds, we're going to address it under the public sector perspective. Then after 15 minutes, that first question and the second question as well. What potential opportunities could arise from a more gender diverse and socially impactful approach to startup financing? So then here goes a bit of like, what opportunities, what solutions can we bring to the table? So these two set of questions, first round, then the second round, these two set of questions under the investor's perspective, then the third one under the female entrepreneur's perspective, and then the last one of this ecosystem builder. It's so important that you all write down on the papers that we're going to give you, because at the end, we're going to collect everything. We're going to harvest the information, summarize it, and we're going to send it to you. So you also see what has come up out of this, and then what are the next steps for it. Because to your point, this is nice doing panels, of course, but this is more action-oriented. We want to get everyone involved. We need to address this issue from different levels of leadership and in the ecosystem. So yes, so it's very important that you are super engaged, very energetic, have we seen? So yes.
So for each round, we're going to give you a hint, like, okay, now it's time to swap. Then you take a new set of paper, and you can click in here, so round 2, make a mark on this paper. Now we're going to talk it from an investor's perspective, right, for 50 minutes. And then we give you a hint again. Okay, now it's time to change. Then you take another set of paper, mark the female entrepreneur perspective on this same question. So there's 2 questions to discuss for 50 minutes, but with different angles.
Exactly.
Okay?
2 questions, 4 perspectives. And we're going to ring a bell whenever is the next one. But thank you. Grab some coffee, grab some tea, and go to your groups. Thank you. Thank you to the panelists. Amazing, the speakers. Amazing. Thank you so much.